8.7 Wayne, New Jersey.
Part of the William Patterson Broadcast Network. Brave New Radio.
The views and opinions expressed on this show are solely those of the host and guest and are not necessarily supported by WPSC 88.7 FM, station management, or the station owner, William Patterson University. Anyone wanting to offer differing opinions may do so by calling the show at 973-720-2738. Abusive callers will be rejected. Now here's your program on WP 88.7 FM, Brave New Radio.
Good morning to you, and it is a wonderful morning indeed, even though in the northern New Jersey, New York area it is freezing, but it is still a good morning because we are here and we can feel it. We are still on top of the grass, so that makes it a good morning. If you can hear the sound of my voice and you're tuned in either on gobrave.org or WP 88.7 FM, that means you're tuned in to another edition of The Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley. And I am he, and I am glad to be with you. All systems are go. My guest is waiting in the wings on the line. All of the systems are up and running. I am here, you are there, so again, we are here for another edition of The Reading Circle, and if you've been listening anytime, or for any length of time, you know I have a ritual and routine on Saturday mornings where I'll share with you what's going on with the weather in our area, and then I'll read from two books. I'll read from the book What Can Happen When We Pray, as well as the book from Iyanla Vanzant, Until Today. I'll introduce my guest, and then from that point on, we will be underway. So I tell you each week as I sit here and prepare and then turn on the theme song, which is The Wrinkle Rag, written, composed, produced, and all the instruments played by yours truly. I just get excited as the energy flows through, and I'm just ready to go. It's kind of like if you played on the football team or the basketball team and it's time for kickoff or tip-off, you have that excitement and that energy. Well, that's what I have on Saturday mornings when it's time to kick the show off. So as I sit here and put on the introductory music, I just become energized. So I'll tell you what, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share the weather with you. It is, that song says, baby, it's cold outside. It's cold outside. Right now, 13.5 degrees. Feels like 2. Expected to have plentiful sunshine. We're only moving to a high of 23 today with a low of 12. But keep in mind right now we're at 13 and it feels like 2. Tonight, a few passing clouds. Low, as I said, of 12. On Sunday, intervals of clouds and sunshine. We're going to move to a high of 32 with a low of 25. Cloudy on Sunday night. And then Monday morning, freezing rain in the morning, changing to light rain in the afternoon, high of 35, low of 19. 80% chance of precipitation during the day, dropping to 20% during the evening. Tuesday, expect the sun to roll back out, sunny, high of 21, low of 12, a few clouds overnight. And then on Wednesday, partly cloudy skies, high of 32, a low of 21. That rounds out our forecast, brought to you right here from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center. Time for our two readings. And as I tell folks all the time, the thing it does for me is it gets my voice going. It also shares some words of wisdom. So I'm not trying to proselytize, not trying to preach, not trying to convert, not trying to do any of that. But I have kicked off the show in this manner for the last few years, and it seems like everything else just flow after I start off reading from these two particular books. So for today, January the 10th, out of the book What Can Happen When We Pray, it says, Sleep in Heavenly Peace. Today's prayer: God who watches over me, you know how easily I am disturbed by the stress and struggle of daily living. I am happy to know that you are a God who neither slumbers nor sleeps. Your care for me is constant. Your love for me is boundless. Amen. Today's reflection. What a joy when assurances are that we can take to the bank and cash. We expect that with our paychecks. We expect that in vows we exchange with others. How secure we are in having God, the creator of all that is, to give us an assurance. God assures us that we are cared for, that we are loved. Oh, let us praise and worship this God of divine and holy love. That's from the book, What Can Happen When We Pray, from the book Until Today. Iyanla Vanzant says, life will work for me when I realize the experience of my faith keeps my faith alive. You must have faith and experience in order to live life fully. You must have faith that all of the things you expect from life are possible for you. You must have faith that no matter what life brings you, you will be able to handle it. You must have faith that your faith will eventually lead to good experiences. Experience teaches you that your faith is paying off. Once you have had an experience, you know that you know. When you know, you become more faithful. Once you have an experience, it makes you want better or different experiences. The difference between faith and experience is this one. One you must work on. The other one works on you. You must work to keep your faith alive. When you are working on faith, it may feel as if you are going against the grain. There may be no evidence that what you believe has any validity. Still, you must move forward faithfully until you have the experience that will lead you to knowing. An experience leaves a mark on your consciousness. An experience will guide your thoughts and your actions. An experience can open your heart to new horizons or close your heart in fear. In the midst of an experience, you must have faith that you will ultimately reap some benefit from what you now know to be true. It is important to know what experience to put your faith in. If you have an unpleasant experience, have faith that you will learn something new, useful, or productive. When you have a pleasant or productive experience, have faith that you can duplicate the experience and make it better. Have faith that your mind and heart will always be open to bigger, better experiences than those you have already had. Until today, you may not have realized that your faith and your experiences work hand in hand. Just for today, use your faith to create better experiences. Use your experiences to activate a deeper sense of faith. Today I am devoted to faithfully seeking to broaden my experiences and to experiencing a deeper faith. That's for today, January the 10th, from the book Until Today by Iyanla Vanzant. And that time has come where I will now introduce my guest for the morning. And I am excited, as I always am with all of my guests. But I'm particularly excited with this particular guest because we've been trying to make this happen for a little while. And this is where networking and connections and everything begin to come into play. Because if you were listening to the show 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago now, I had Carlita Hodges as my guest that particular morning. And she was discussing her latest book, Carlita's Way. And as we were in the discussion, she mentioned Nikki's name. And I said, well, I've been trying to get Nikki on the show now. We've been going back and forth and never made it happen. And then as it turns out, the publicist Florence Edwards and Charla Mackey, those two got together and they said, we know Nikki. We'll see if we can get her on the show for you. Sure enough, Florence was able to do just that. And she is with me this morning, none other than Nikki Woods. If you have gone on any of the social media sites, you had to have heard Nikki's name. You've had to have seen her face and her picture because she shares throughout the various media sites, with the social media sites, always words of wisdom, particularly for writers, for authors, and pretty much some words of wisdom for anybody. But she is a multimedia personality, national best-selling author, social media and personal branding coach, motivational speaker, and voiceover artist. Nikki Woods is the CEO of Nikki Woods Media, where she utilizes her highly specialized skills in social media, content marketing, and platform building to serve her clients. Nikki is also the senior producer of the Tom Joyner Morning Show, the most successful syndicated urban radio show in history, reaching more than 8 million people on a daily basis. Woods studied education at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and journalism at the University of St. Francis in Joliet, Illinois. Her journey in broadcasting landed her in various markets, including St. Louis, Boston, and Chicago, before Woods became senior producer of the acclaimed nationally syndicated Tom Joyner Morning Show, or TJMS, where she is responsible for the engaging on-air content heard each morning on the over 100 affiliate radio stations that air the award-winning program. Tom Joyner says, quote, "I completely trust her judgment, and I know that she brings her A game every day. You can see the results of that in the ratings and listener response." Woods is also a TJMS contributor, dishing out her own brand of infotainment on weekend events and activities in the segment she created and produces. What in the Weekend with Nikki Woods. She can also be seen and heard on a variety of programs, including the TJMS Community Watch on WSRB Soul 106.3, their Chicago affiliate, and Beyond the Studio, celebrity interviews on BlackAmericaWeb.com. Her distinguishable voiceover work can also be heard on various commercials, independent documentaries, and audiobooks. Her Mama's Gone Wild website and weekly blog entries on BlackAmericaWeb.com highlight with insight and hilarity the ups and downs of being a hard-working radio producer by morning, an ever-patient classroom mom by afternoon, and adventurous mother of two by night. As a highly sought-after keynote speaker who's earned the title of Global Visibility Expert, Nikki continues to reach millions and growing using multimedia to empower and train audiences with messages and methods for excelling in business, marketing, and personal growth. Nikki currently serves as an OWN ambassador as well as an ambassador for Pretty Girl or Pretty Brown Girl Incorporated. She is also the author of Easier Said Than Done. Nikki Woods, welcome to the Reading Circle with Marc Medley.
Thank you. I am super excited to be here.
I tell you what, I don't think it surpasses my excitement. It's like, well, I love you more. No, I love you more. I love you more. No, I love you more.
Well, I'll let you have it.
So it's one of those. But no, in all honesty, and for those of you in the listening audience who may have joined this morning because Nikki's on the show, welcome. And I also welcome you to make it a habit to rise early on Saturday morning because we always have some exciting guests on the show. But again, I'm feeling a little, and I don't usually feel this way, and I'm saying this kind of tongue-in-cheek and joking, but knowing that you work with Tom Joyner, I'm feeling like a little intimidated here. But
well, no, I think you do a phenomenal job. I was checking you out online, just to get a feel for your style and the kinds of interviews you do, and so you're a great personality.
Well, coming from you, I really take that as a compliment, and I thank you, and I say that teasingly. And, I do this vision board thing, and, I've been on the air for the last 14 years, and I said, one day this show is going to go into syndication, we went into, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we went into the whole web streaming thing where we could be heard around the world. So I said, okay, that's a step towards it, because now anybody, regardless of where they are in the world, if they have a computer and internet, they can log on. But
and that's very important. That's the way things are going. I mean, that's a big part of most radio stations. So
yeah, it really is. So that was one of the biggest stuff because up to that point, we were pretty much local based. Like we catch a little bit of Lower Manhattan, a good section, good portion, about 2 million plus listeners in the northern New Jersey, New York area. Mm-hmm. But once we started web streaming, then it went. We were all over the place then.
It was bananas, huh?
Exactly. So I was thrilled with that move. I was like, I could not applaud station management enough for that one. So, all right, this is what I usually do. I usually step my audience through kind of like the beginnings and we work our way up because a lot of times, particularly because this show is based for readers and writers, a lot of times I have aspiring authors who are in the listening audience. And so I always like for them to get the good feel for first, what sparked folks to even write or do what they do, and then the process of getting books published, and hopefully it would be an incentive for them if they have a book in them to go ahead and get it done, and also kind of give them some of the tips on that. But then when I have someone like you that does multiple things, that's like a multiple inspiration. So it's kind of like, so the conversation would be a little bit about everything you do. But we just kind of going to get started from kind of like roll the tape back to whenever like it was little Nikki. I think you did like a rollback Thursday or something like that, and you showed like whenever you were a little girl.
Yeah, I do that a lot.
Yeah. So we're going to go back to like that picture, those days.
Yeah.
Kind of like, where did it all begin? Or, I mean, were you always like a studious child, or school something you always loved, or was reading and writing your thing, or did that come later in life?
You know what? I don't know if I loved school or not. I mean, excelling in school was never an option. You know what I mean? It's just that's the kind of household we came from.
That's right.
You know, that was what you did. You know, parents went to work. Well, my mom stayed home for a while before she went back to work. But my dad went. You know, he earned the money. My job was to do well in school. My sister's job was to do well in school. So that was never a question. But reading, I loved, and writing is what I always did. I mean, reading was my escape. And, you know, I think the best writers are avid readers.
Absolutely.
And so it just kind of went hand in hand, you know, for me. And I was always, you know, my mom says I was a really good liar when I was, you know, when I was a kid. But for me,
that's imagination.
It was just imagination.
That's
it was just making up stories. And I hadn't really, I think, gotten to the point where I differentiated, like, okay, you need to put this lie on paper and make it a story. You know, instead of just telling your friends. I remember I went to preschool one day, and I told them I went to Nigeria the day before. And my teacher was like, that's not possible. You can't just go and come back like that. But, you know, in my head, it was just a story.
That's right.
So finally, thank goodness, I learned the difference. And, I mean, I really started writing. But that's just my form, one of my forms of communication. I mean, that's just what I do. So I can't ever remember not reading and writing.
I'm sitting here because, as you know, in radio, we can turn the mic buttons off. And I'm sitting here because my imagination is vivid as well. So now I've connected, like, the picture of you when you're a little girl telling this story about going to Nigeria yesterday, and I'm cracking up sitting here.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, you know, when you look back and, you know, in the moment, it doesn't, you know, you can't see what it is and where it's going to go. But when you look back and you see how everything kind of ties together, it's really fascinating.
Well, it really is, and you hit it when you said most writers, not all, but most writers were avid readers as kids. And your description of the household at that time that was exactly where my house was. In terms of, my mother took off from work for 10 years, from like 1962 to 1972, to get going with me and my sister, and my father went out to work every day. And then after we got a little bit older, she went on back to work. But that's exactly what it was. It's like, our job is to go to work to earn the money. Your job is to go to school. It was no debate.
Absolutely. There was no debate.
No debate.
It's funny because, you know, it's like there was never a question of whether or not we were going to go to college. I mean, they never asked us. It was just always implied.
That's right.
And not that that's a bad thing. I mean, I think as a parent now and, you know, just older, I realize that maybe, you know, some kids don't need to go to college right away, or there's other options for them. And, you know, you can still be successful if you're determined to be successful. But in our house, it just wasn't ever asked. It was never asked.
It was the same with me. And when I got around 17, 18, I had this notion of just going straight from high school to the Air Force. And they had like what? Like, you're like, my father was like, now look.
That's funny.
So he was more or less like, look, now you go to college first. And if you still want to go to the Air Force, you can then go. But at least at that point, you have your degree. If you want, you can go in as an officer or whatever. But no, you're going to college. I mean, Air Force will be there. But it was kind of like that unspoken rule as well. And the other thing you touched on was this whole notion of imagination. Now, I'm the principal. When I'm not doing radio on the weekend, I'm the principal of a school during the week. And I have grades 1 through 8.
Wow.
It's interesting because on the one hand, from the lying perspective, the imagination, it does kick in. But from the standpoint of like, okay, now look, I need you to make up a story for your literature assignment or your language arts assignment. That's whenever they go blank. And a lot of times with the generation or the kids that I'm serving and working with today, I kind of look at them and wonder, well, do you have any imagination? And has technology maybe kind of stripped some of that away? Because I know, like, the kids and everything that I grew up with doing it, we had plans. I mean, like you said, you just make up a story. I was in Nigeria yesterday. Like, what? I mean, I just don't know in terms of the kids if they've been.
See, I don't think I don't think that it's gone. I really don't think that it's gone. And I look at some of the things they create differently. I agree with that.
Maybe
but
that's
I
what
look,
it is.
Yeah, I look at even people when I coach people, when writing their books and going through the publishing process, and a lot of times people will tell me, I have all these stories inside of me, but I just can't write them. And I think that as a society, especially when we were growing up, we wanted everybody to do it the same way,
right.
And not everybody can process their creativity the same way.
Good point.
And so I think that it's there, but I just think that we still haven't transitioned education in education or in society on how to let people be who they are.
I
and
agree.
Still see it as successful.
I agree.
So,
I agree. And that's one of the issues I have with, and I've said this before on the air, and I've said it to my supervisor and everybody, that's one of the problems I have with these state standardized tests.
Exactly.
Because they're trying to make everyone, like that test is one size fits all, regardless of what your interests or your ability levels or anything. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have some form of assessment or accountability. I just think it's unfair that schools are rated and graded on one test throughout the year based on what the kids may or may not be able to do. Some people just don't test well.
Exactly, and that was my point. I mean, some people, they just don't test well, and they don't approach testing the same. And as a mother, I think I can really appreciate it because I have two very different children.
Right.
And so I can't parent them the same way. And I can't, have the same expectations of how they will perform in school because they're just so different from each other. And I wish that, more people would look at it like that way instead of trying to keep everybody in this box. Just let people be who they are, and I think that we would see a huge difference in how we produce and how successful our society is.
No, it's true, and that's the way I see it. Because some people, they may be able to tell you verbally the answer better than they can write it, and vice versa. Some can do it by putting something together. I mean, there's just so many more ways of showing whether or not. And then the crazy part about it, Nikki, and I won't stay on the education thing too long, but I know you majored in education for undergrad. The crazy part about it is now they'll turn around and say, well, based on what that child did on that test, they didn't learn anything all year. I said, that's not true. You're not going to tell me the child sat in my building for 10 months and learned nothing.
Right.
I mean, they learned something. Right. I mean, they showed growth, or they learned, or maybe they just didn't learn what you're trying to get them to express on this particular test. But they learned. But we're hit hard with that whole thing of, well, they didn't learn anything because they didn't do well on this test. Like, oh, wow. So in any event.
Yeah.
So now you education was your undergrad major at Howard?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And were you originally intending to teach, or did you teach?
No, I did teach. I taught fifth grade.
Okay, all right.
For a couple of years, and you know what? I love kids, and I love the interaction, and I loved just the wonder. Fifth grade is a wonderful year. They still have that innocence and that, well, at least they did when I was teaching. They still have that innocence and, the open-eyed amazement that comes with being a child, but they're really starting to think for themselves, and
Correct.
They're really starting to become independent. So it for me, it was a great age. I did not like dealing with the politics of education. I didn't like dealing with the administration.
Right.
And so it just was not for me. It just was not for me. And I was really, really young. I mean, I started teaching at, 21.
Right.
So by 23, I was burnt out. I was really burnt out. And so I had made an agreement with my grandmother that before I stopped teaching, my mother is Jamaican, so my grandmother in Jamaica, I had made a promise to her that I would come back out to Jamaica, and I actually taught there for a little bit, where I helped the area that my grandmother grew up in. It's called Swift River. It's right across from the Blue Mountains in the Portland area, and I helped them develop programs. In Jamaica, their educational system is a little bit different, and probably at about our seventh grade level, they have to take a test, and that test determines whether they're going to go the college route or whether they're going to go the trade school route.
Correct.
And so the people in this area, were testing more often trade school route. And so they wanted some programs developed that would strengthen them in math and science and English so that they would test into the college route. So I did that for a while before I came back and went back to school for journalism.
Well, I'm extremely familiar with Jamaica because my wife is from Jamaica. And
oh, cool.
In terms of, I've driven people, because I'm from America, and when we go over there, I rent a car and drive, and people look at me like, well, you drive there? Yes.
You're like my dad. Oh, my goodness. People think my dad is the Jamaican in the family. Like, no, he's not.
Yeah, that's what I say. I'm the honorary. I'm the honorary Jamaican.
Yeah, he's so funny.
But you're right in terms of the school system, because my sister-in-law is a teacher there. So, and yeah, it is a total. As a matter of fact, I wish I could do some of the things they do in Jamaica here in the U.S.
Yeah, it's definitely different.
So I laugh when you say I was 21 by 23 I was burned out teaching, because at this point statistics show with teachers they don't generally last 5 years in 2015. It's rare that you get, if you get a teacher, they can get to the 5th year mark. Most likely they're going to go forth, but most get out before the 5 years. And so I can totally relate to what you're talking about in terms of, and I see it as well, because this is the first, and I was having this conversation yesterday because I had a teacher that I hired, and within a month she came back into my office and said, Mr. Medley, I hate to tell you, but I'm resigning.
Yeah.
I said, that's the quickest I've ever had.
We put extreme pressure on our teachers. I mean, first it takes a special individual to want to do that anyway.
Yes.
They don't get paid nearly what they're worth. But then we also add not only the pressure of just having a young mind in your hands that you're developing, but then you get the pressure from the parents who often don't participate in their own child's education enough.
Correct.
And then you get the pressure from the school system, and then you get the pressure from just America in general. I mean, it's really an intense position to be in. So I applaud all of the teachers, no matter how long you're in there, because at least you had the desire to help groom a society and develop minds for our future leaders. I mean, it's an intense position to be in.
It really is. It really is. It really is. I'm trying to think. There's something I always in my presentations with my teachers, and I'm trying to think. It's like this slow and like there's. Let me see, and it'll have to come to me because there's a couple of them, but. It'll come to me before the show is out, but it's like you make all occupation or all careers possible, something like that it is. And I always tell you, it doesn't matter. If the child becomes an astrophysicist, he or she still had a teacher. So no, I don't care whatever position you wind up in, president of the United States, president of the world, or an astrophysicist, astronaut, pilot, whatever. So you had teachers. So I think it says teachers make that's what it is. Teachers make all other professions possible. So I always end all my presentations with my teachers with that. Yeah. Teachers make all other professions possible.
And that's so true. I mean, that, and they don't nearly get the appreciation. I mean, every teacher that has been a part of my life has shaped it in some way. And even the administrators. I mean, even when I went back to school to teach, I taught in the same school district, that I was in. So I worked with a lot of the teachers that, had a hand in grooming me. And, just for the principals. And then my mom, she stayed home for a while, but when we were in school full time, she went to work in the school district where we were. So,
all right.
So I even taught in the same school where my mom was a school nurse. So, I mean, it's just amazing, the dedication that they have, and they don't nearly get, the thanks that they deserve.
This is true. And again, I always try to remind them of that in terms of, look, without you, there would be no president. There would be no engineer. There would be no lawyer.
Absolutely.
There would be no doctor. And it's funny, whenever you said you taught 5th grade, immediately my mind went back to my 5th grade teacher, Beverly Campbell. Tall, statuesque African-American woman. that was my 5th grade teacher. And because the school I went to, during that time frame, and I think back in terms of having African-American teachers, and I was fortunate enough to have a number of them, and Beverly Campbell was one of them. But I remember my second grade teacher was at my 50th birthday party. Whenever I had my 50th grade, my second grade teacher came to that. And so I remember all of my teachers so well. And it is an important mission and assignment. Now, we're going to take a very short information sharing time. I stopped calling them breaks, Nikki, because I didn't want people to think they needed to get up and go anywhere. So I said I have an information sharing time. So I'm going to share some information with you for the next couple of minutes. If you've just joined us, my guest, and I hope you've been with us since 6, my guest is Nikki Woods, and we're talking about a whole bunch of things, working our way up to her becoming a Renaissance woman. And we're working our way up to that, as she explains, because at this point we were in the point where she was in the educational field. And then we're going to shift, after I share this information, into her journalism activities and being producer or the senior producer at the Tom Joyner Morning Show and writing of the books and so forth and so on. So you know the drill, listening audience. If you're new to the listening audience, this is the drill. You go on all your social media sites. And you or text somebody, tweet somebody, get on your Facebook, get on your LinkedIn, your Pinterest, all of them, and tell them to tune in to gobrave.org right now. They can still post and do whatever they want to do. All they have to do is open up another tab, go to gobrave.org and turn on their speakers, and they can listen to me and Nikki while they do everything else they do. So I'm going to share this with you, and then we will continue on.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your basement. There's a pair of overalls that overall you're not so into anymore. A perfectly good laptop that hasn't seen your lap in months. And even more stuff. But still no jobs? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed. And they're the stuff inside your stuff. Even inside that winter coat that moved with you to Phoenix. Our job is to unlock those jobs. And it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover keytar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs. Find your nearest donation center at goodwill.org. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
In 50 feet, turn left. Why are you driving so slowly?
After a few drinks, I'm taking it slow.
Well, you're not fooling the cop behind you.
What?
Get ready to pay in 0.1 miles.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hi, my name is Stan Myers, and I'm here at FM 88.7. I do a jazz show called Just a Mood. And if you like the music, anything from Louis to Lester Bowie, I'm your man. That's Sunday afternoons, 3 to 6. Looking to hear from you, okay?
You're listening to The Reading Circle with Marc Medley on Brave New Radio.
Yes, indeed, you are. You are listening to The Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley. We come to you live each Saturday morning at this time, from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And actually, I'm on the air 2 more hours after that, where we change formats and we spin the gospel music, the good news in song. The good news is I have the flexibility, though. Whenever things get heated up, I have the flexibility to extend or we go shorter. But if we need to extend, we extend, and we change the format at the time the interview is over. But for the most part, the Reading Circle is on from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. The M&M hour from 7 to 8, where we put on the gospel music. And then Martha and Friends from 8 to 9, where we continue on with the gospel music, the good news and song. And I don't ask you to do anything that I don't do. So while we were on the break, I actually went on Hootsuite and let folks know to tune in. And I see Nikki has done the same. I'm looking there. At 6:32, she sent out as well. So, you know, we're pumping it up. We're promoting it. And we just need you all to click in and tune in, let somebody know that we're on the air. So right before I shared that information with you, we were talking about Nikki being in the world of education. And also, whenever I was reading her bio, which I like to read the whole thing, by the way, because, Nikki, a lot of people get bashful and shy and say, oh, I don't want you to read the whole thing. Like, no. I need to do that because I need it to be an inspiration for someone else, that if it can happen for Nikki, if it can happen for me, if it can happen for this one, that one, the other, it can happen for you. So I like people to have the opportunity to hear what is possible. But in your bio, we talked about you going into journalism. Now, what brought that decision on?
Well, it's interesting. I really don't know when I made that decision. I've always, enjoyed journalism and journalists and media. So I don't know when it clicked, but when it did click, it just made sense. I mean, it's just what I've always done. I mean, like, I mentioned earlier, I'm just a communicator. I love that. And I remember, my father is a very schedule-driven guy. And so we had a very set schedule in our house. And he was home every day at 4 for dinner. And he would come home, he would take a shower, and he would get ready, and a lot of times he would miss the news. So during dinner, I would do the news report. I would relay the news to my father. And, it's just, what we did, and I never thought about it. I would enjoy sitting, especially on Sunday mornings with my dad, and we would read the paper. He would do a section, and he'd hand me a section, and that's just kind of how our house was. But nobody ever said, what about journalism? None of my teachers never said it. My parents never said it. And it's just, I think that you go on the path that you're supposed to go on. So I think I was supposed to go in education,
right.
But it's just interesting to me that nobody ever thought, of journalism as a career for me. And so, from the first class, it just fit. It's just what I did. It's just who I am. And so, to me, it's not even like a career or a job or work. It's just as natural as breathing for me. And so, like I said, I think that things happen the way they're supposed to happen. I think I was supposed to have all the experiences that I did, but education for me was never really the right thing. And then luckily for me, being in journalism and doing what I do, I still get to go to school all the time. And talk. I taught college for a while, journalism classes on the college level for a while. So education is really still a part of who I am. But journalism is what I was born to do.
Well, the interesting thing about it, because they dovetail, they mix with each other. It's not like one is the opposite end of the other, because in journalism you really are still educating. When you start talking,
absolutely, yeah.
When you start talking, because that's what I tell folks all the time. Because people come look at me, because I've had varied experiences between military and fraternal and education and corporate and radio. So people look at it, and I said, but if you look through the unifying thread that runs through everything I've done has been education. It's about whenever I'm communicating, whether I'm writing a blog, whether I'm doing radio, whether I'm doing social media, it is about sharing information with others, which is a part of education. So journalism in and of itself is still connected to educating people or sharing information with people, which is really what education is about. You're bringing out the best in people, or you're bringing out what's already in them. So when we share information with them, it may click or connect into something that's already there. So the two go hand in hand, and you're right. Whatever path we're on, that's where we're supposed to be. And so when you were doing journalism, when you studied that, were you studying to be like a reporter? Were you studying to do the writing, news, like news journalism or print journalism, or was all of it in the curriculum?
Well, it's all in the curriculum, so you kind of have to touch on all of it. But TV is what I was doing. And I actually started out as a television sports reporter. And I was, I worked in the St. Louis market for a little bit, and then I was newly hired at ESPN. And a friend of mine who was programming a radio station in Boston, who we kind of just connected through other people that we knew. He was hosting the morning show. He was also the program director there at WILD in Boston. And, he said, well, why don't you come in, see if you can take a few days off and sit in with me and co-host the show. I think you'd be really good. And so I did. And I absolutely fell in love with radio. As much as I loved television, radio offered an intimacy, I think, with the audience that television never could. And I loved it. It was just really like sitting in your living room having a conversation.
That's right.
With a group of your best friends, even though you may have, we have 8 million listeners on the Tom Joyner Morning Show. In Chicago, it was 1 million. I can't remember what it was in Boston, but it's like, 3 of your best girlfriends are
right.
just over hanging out, and you're having a conversation. And I loved that. I loved that, aesthetics, I guess, don't get in the way
right.
of the information. I would do a story, even when I was in St. Louis, I was working for KMOX Radio, and I was also at the CBS television affiliate. And, I would do a story at KMOX, and I would get one response. I would do the same story at CBS, and somebody would tell me that, they didn't like the color of my dress or something. I'm like, well, this has nothing to do with the story,
right.
or, they loved how my hair looked. And I'm just like, people aren't getting it. And so, radio and then I just loved the relaxed,
right.
musical format. I mean, you could have fun. I mean, Tom really sums it up with his tagline, purpose and party. I mean,
yes.
You get both of them in there. And so I just fell in love with radio, and I never went back.
And you know what, you bring up, and I laugh because like this show, as you know, is early morning. So I think, you're on East Coast time as well, if I'm not mistaken. But
no, I'm not.
Oh, you're not on East. Oh, I thought you wait, are you on West Coast time?
No.
Central?
I'm in Dallas, so I'm Central.
Oh, you're in Dallas, so you're Central. So it's even earlier for you. So it's like 20 to 7 for me. It's 20 to 6 for you. And a lot of my guests, a good deal of my guests, are calling in from California. So it's like when 6 o'clock we kick off, it's 3 o'clock in the morning their time. And I always tell them, well, look, you can do the interview in your pajamas if you want to. Because we're on the phone. Nobody's going to see. And even when I come into the studio on Saturday mornings, I'll throw on a pair of sweatpants or a pair of jeans and a sweatshirt. Like you said, the aesthetics are not there. And a lot of times I'll tell them, I'm glad this is not TV. So
right.
I don't have to drag myself here early in the studio trying to get prepped to be on camera. But
I think what's interesting is that, learning both mediums has really prepared me now for this new digital age. So I can still, do television. I can still do video and really, really enjoy it, but it's more on my terms now than anybody else.
That's for sure. Because I always tell people there's no experience that's wasted. There is no...
And I totally agree. And so, like I said, everything that's happened in my life, I think, has happened for a reason, and it's layered, layered for me. Now that I'm doing what I'm doing, I can really appreciate everything that I've experienced.
So now, how did you come to be the senior producer with Tom Joyner? I mean, was this something like you all were together before anybody knew who Tom Joyner was, or did you come in after he was already? He was already like everybody knew who Tom Joyner. How did that come to be? Because I know we're talking about paths and wherever you're supposed to be, you're going to be. But I'm sure inquiring minds always want to know, how do you get a job like that?
Honestly, I think the biggest the biggest thing for me in this job was just being open to the opportunity.
Right.
Because up until my experience with Tom, I've always been talent. I've always been on air full time. I was never a producer. I was the news director. I was the traffic reporter sometimes, but I was always talent. And so when they made a change in Chicago, I was on air doing mornings in Chicago. I've been there for 10 years. And they decided that it was a local show, and they decided that they wanted to go syndicated. And really, up until that point, I couldn't think of anything better than what I was doing.
Right.
Chicago's the number 3 market. We had 1 million listeners. We were the number 1 morning show. We were rolling. And so when they made the change, it was really like, somebody had thrown cold water in my face. I was frozen for a good while, not knowing what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to leave Chicago. Chicago is a great market for any kind of personality, sports personality, TV, radio, and I just couldn't think of anything else. I had built my family there. I had moved my parents to Chicago. My sister and her family were there. I couldn't even fathom what I was going to do. And, Tom was on, when I was on in Chicago, Tom was syndicated, and he was on our urban AC station. But I had never really listened to his show. I knew who he was. I was familiar with him, but I didn't really know him. But little did I know they had been watching me. And when I was taken off in Chicago, they started calling. But I didn't want to be a producer.
Right.
I didn't want to do that. None of that was in my career plan, I guess, if you will. So, you know, they would call and I'd be like, I'll think about it. And in that space, you know, my oldest son was going to kindergarten. I thought it would be cute to take some time off and be a stay-at-home mom. And shortly I figured out that was not who I was, not how I felt. So I started doing a lot on social media, and I got a blog talk radio show. I learned, you know, social media, and I started really building a presence there. And that's when they really started calling, because little did I know that they were then looking at bringing Tom into kind of the digital age. They really wanted to beef up their online presence. They wanted to get him involved in social media. And that's when they were like, we really want you to be a part of this team. And soon they just made it too good to say no.
Right.
And so, you know, I picked up and I moved to Dallas. And it was the best decision I could have ever made. You know, I still get to do on air enough that I'm satisfied. That part of me is satisfied. But I've developed a whole new skill set. And I've had experiences, you know, with Tom that I never would have had if I had just followed my ego,
right,
and said, no, I'm talented, I can't do that, you know,
right,
a producer, you know, and it has been the best experience. I mean, I thought that my dad had an amazing work ethic, but Tom's is ridiculous. It's so funny, like my first week there, because as a producer, I mean, and especially as a producer of this show, I mean, I have a long day.
Right.
You know, so I love being in the studio in the morning, but then I have to, you know, put my manager hat on and manage a team of people. So I'm, you know, I can be at the office, you know, for a while.
Right.
And, you know, one day I looked up and I saw Tom walking back and forth, and I'm like, what are you doing? You know, you're talented. Go home, take a nap. And he's like, no. He's like, this is what I do. He's like, this is my brand. You know, I put in the work, and he truly does. And so I've learned so much from him. And like I said, I've developed a whole new skill set. And so it's been the most amazing journey that I could ever, you know, have hoped for. And so I always tell people you have to remain open.
Correct.
Sometimes opportunities are presented just to see if you're going to take them. You know, that's how God works. And, you know, if I had continued to say no because, you know, my ego was saying, you know, you're not that, then I wouldn't have had this phenomenal experience. So a lot of times it's just the people who are open to saying yes that, you know, get these opportunities.
That's
because
true.
I really don't think that there's anything extraordinary about me other than I'm determined to succeed. I'm determined to do it a different way, and I remain open to opportunities.
That's right. And see, that's what I mean. I tell people all the time, because some people really get locked into like one thing. And I've never been one of those type people. Like you heard me say a couple of minutes ago, in terms of I've done corporate. I did that for a number of years before I cut over into education. I've done, you know, the fraternity thing. I've done the church thing. I've done the military thing, the radio things. But for me, that's what makes life exciting. And I was listening to you were saying in terms of opportunity. People ask me all the time, if you had an opportunity to make the same money you make as being principal or more, you know, just doing radio straight up, would you do that? And I kind of look at them like they have today. Of course. I mean, not that I don't like being principal, because I love being principal, but I really love radio as well. So if I had the opportunity to do this full time, nothing else but this, I would. But something else important that you said was, and this is what listening audience, particularly those of you who are kids listening, you have to put in the work. There is no such thing. Like all of these jobs that are quote unquote glamour jobs, there's work that goes behind it. And there's an old saying that says, if it looks easy, it isn't. That means anytime somebody has made anything look easy, you could rest and be assured there was a whole lot of work that went into that. And so to hear you talk about how, and you're, again, you're like my third or fourth person that's in media that has shared that same thing in terms of the work hours. Folks need to understand that's what goes along with it. Yes, there's fame, there's fortune, there's celebrity, there's connections, there's this and that. But if you don't put the work in, That's not coming. And so I'm glad that you've shared that in terms of your work ethic, Tom Joyner's work ethic, because people just think, oh, Tom is on the air 4 or 5 hours a day. That's easy. No, it's not.
No, it's not. It's absolutely not. And it's something that we never close.
Right.
We don't have off. I tell people when I was actually in Jamaica when Michael Jackson died, and I was on vacation. My whole family was there, and Tom called, and he was like, "You need to go to work." And I go to work because that's just how radio operates.
That's right.
That's how media operates. It never closes.
That's right.
So I was done for the day. When Andre Crouch died, we were done. Yeah. And then you have to go into a whole different kind of, you have to go back to work, and that's just the way it is. And if you aren't ready to answer that call, then this is just not the job for you. And
Correct.
Every profession has that. I mean, every profession has its thing. And you're right. You look at Tom and his success, and then you hear the stories about, when he was at, the station, and you had to literally go in and get your money like before noon and try to get it to the bank before the bank, just in case the money was gone by the time you tried to cash your check. I mean, those are, there are those kind of situations. When I started in Boston, I mean, it was no money. It was no money. Right. It was an AM station. It was a sun up to sundown station. And for people who don't know what that is, I mean, literally, when the sun came up, we went on. When the sun went down, we went on. It was right. Not glamorous, but it was what I loved, and it was what I wanted to do. Right. And so you pick up and you move to Boston where you don't know anybody, and then you decide, okay, I'm ready for something else, and you take a leap of faith. I mean, I don't even remember. Boston was such a special situation. I don't even know if I quit or if I got fired, but I just know that job ended. I think it was a little bit of both. And I moved to Chicago. I had another offer in Florida, but Chicago was the market that I felt I needed to be in. I mean, my sister was there with her family. I loved it. I loved that area. I loved what GCI stood for. I mean, they really were a power. They still are, but at that time they were the station to be at. They had the number one programmer in the country. They were the number one urban station in the country. And Chicago, like I said, is just a great city. And so I just, I drove through. I was driving through. I stopped to visit my sister. I had, sent my air check to, and air check is just kind of a demo of what you sound like on the air. I sent my air check every week for a year to Elroy. To kind of, to get a job, really. And I drove through, and I was like, you know what? He's never responded. I never heard back from him. I would always get that nice little form letter. We don't have any opportunities. And Mark, in the media business, I mean, for you to get a job, normally somebody has to lose one. They don't just create something.
That's correct.
For you. So, if there's no openings, there's just no opening. And I drove through. I stopped. I visited with my sister, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go up there. And I showed up. I didn't have an appointment. They told me Elroy was not in the building. I met with the assistant program director. He's like, we don't know who you are. We've never heard of you. We don't remember getting in air checks. I was like, well, you know what? I have one. So let's listen.
That's right.
And we did. And when I tell you, I don't know where Elroy was, but all of a sudden he was in the building, and I got hired that day.
But see, that's the kind of drive, tenacity, determination that one has to have. If particularly in this industry, in this field, you have to kind of have that, like, I'm not going to take no for an answer type spirit. And then because
you do.
You really do. And
a
lot of people always say, well, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I said, well, my response, my pushback then, I was like, that's partially true, but who you know can only get you so far. Who you know can get your foot in, but what you know is what keeps you in. So it's kind of like, maybe like who you know, but you need that what, and you need that drive, and you need that I'm not going to take no, that willingness, because most people, first of all, not going to be willing to just show up like that. You just have to you have to have that kind of mentality, like, well, because really, Nikki, what it comes down to is even if they had said no that particular day, you still were no worse off than you were before you walked in the door.
Oh, absolutely not. And they would have known who I was.
Right. But since they said yes, now it opened up a whole new door. So in that particular gamble, you won, but had you not, you still would have been no worse than you were.
Absolutely.
And that's what people don't get.
And even if they had said no, I mean, I think that you're right. I think that it takes a certain kind of mindset in any profession to be successful, because even if they had said no, to me, it wouldn't have been a reflection on who I was or what talent I had. I would have come back.
Correct.
I would have left and I would have gone to Florida and I would have, gotten better. I would have studied. I would have done whatever, but I still would have come back.
Correct.
And that's the difference. Some people get a no and they go sit in the corner and they feel bad about who they are and what they do. And no's are really never a reflection of who we are. It's just not the right time. It may not be the right opportunity. God says no and protects us from a lot of stuff that we think that we want.
That's
not
right.
And so no is never a reflection on us. And that's how, and we have to start looking at that differently. We can't let a no make us feel bad about who we are.
That's correct.
That's not what it is.
It is. And now for those of you in the listening audience, that's the type of information that Nikki shares. It's one of the types that she shares on the social media. It's inspirational message, just as what you just heard her say. That just because you get a no is not reflective of you. All right, so those are the type of words of wisdom that she will share throughout the various social media networks. So I'll tell you what, shifting gears a little bit, tell me a little bit about your book, because I know you also have an author forum or something big coming up that I've seen with the purple banners and your picture in there and so forth.
Yeah.
There's yeah, because I know it's purple.
You know what? When I started my company, it was all about, my company is Nikki Woods Media, and it was all about helping people develop their platforms, because really platforms have changed. Before, like 10 years ago, I mean, you had to go to an Oprah, you had to go to a Tom Joyner, you had to go to somebody like that in order to get your message out. But now with the boom of social media, we can develop our own platforms.
Yes, indeed.
We can develop platforms that encourage Tom Joyner and Oprah to come to us. Because as a producer at the Tom Joyner Morning Show, and I've talked to my friends at work at these various shows like Oprah, we look on the Internet to see who's doing what and who has an audience that can add to our audience. So that's what I started my company for. But then I realized that like 90% of my clients were either authors who couldn't find a publishing company because they had no audience, or they were people who wanted to be authors and really didn't know how to go about doing it. So we shifted a little bit in that now we work a lot with authors and helping them getting their books finished and coaching them through the writing process, but also the publishing process. And then, at the same time, helping them develop a platform so that when they do have their book ready, that they have somebody to sell it to. So it's been a really phenomenal, experience, because as a writer, I love to work with other people who want to be authors and other writers and helping them birth their book. So I do a lot of training. So I have another one coming up on Tuesday about, the whole getting media coverage once you write a book. But I also have other opportunities for people who really want to get their book done. So that website is wannabeenauthor.com, WANNABE, and author.com. And you'll find out, exactly what I'm doing. But it's been an amazing journey. And like I said, everything is just kind of layered, It's like when I first started my company, I never thought specifically of authors, even though that makes sense for me. But it was, I gained a really, really specific skill set that authors need and don't always necessarily have. As creators, sometimes we just like to be in that create space. We don't like to be in the marketing and selling space. But you have
That's right.
And so my company really helps develop all three of those areas. And so it's really, really exciting.
Yeah, I see it. As a matter of fact, whenever you said the site, I went to it, the wannabeenauthor.com. And yeah, I was teasing you about the purple banner because I know your flyer was purple, but I see like it really, when I went to the site, it really is a purple banner.
That's why I laughed. Like, it really is purple.
So it's like create killer press releases. Yep. Get more media coverage and secure bankable book reviews needed to be a profitable and successful author. And again, and one of the things on this show is to do just that in terms of, because the guests that I have on the show range from local, no name to international, like somebody like yourself. Right. I mean, I've had Martin Luther King's niece on here. I've had Jackie Gingrich on here, Newt Gingrich's daughter. I've had Judge Hatchett on here. I've had Khalila Ali on here, Muhammad Ali's first wife. I've Nikki Giovanni. I've kind of spanned the gamut from, international figures to no-name figures, someone that no one's ever heard of. But the whole point is to get them heard of. So someone listening.
No, absolutely. And that's what they say. I mean, there are a lot of talented people out there, but if nobody knows that you're talented, sometimes, and so I think that there are a lot of best-selling authors out there that just don't have the audience, or they don't have their book yet. And so that's really what, that's where my heart is. And that's what I think everybody has a story to tell. They say 9 out of 10 people want to be authors. Right. But they just, a lot of them just don't know how to get it done. So, yeah. So
and the other piece of that is because being an avid reader, I'm always, and particularly prior to Kindle, and I still go quite often, but the bookstores don't see me. I always say Barnes & Noble, but they're not the only ones. But they don't see me quite as much as they used to now that I can download some. But where I'm going with this is, the other trick is how to get your book noticed because there's so many books out there. You have to now get yours to pop out on the shelf when folks are walking through.
So, packaging of the book, but also packaging, your author package is really, really important. And I think that, it absolutely can be done. I just don't think a lot of people have any idea how to do it. And so, it's a process, and, I know the process, my team knows the process. And so we've, already helped, people get to where they want to be. I even, have opportunities for people to write with me. I'm doing a collaboration book, with 15 amazing women about their entrepreneurial journey and what kept them motivated. Wow. And so that's coming out in July. So, I really, am about not only, helping people and empowering them, but, learning from them as we all go through this process.
Well, again, because I'm into, as you can tell, quotes and sayings and this, that, and the other. And but there is one that says there's no way, and I'm paraphrasing it, there's no way you can help others without helping yourself. It's impossible.
It's impossible, and it's impossible not to learn from the people that you surround yourself with. And it's so funny because people are always like, well, thank you. And I'm like, no, thank you. Because, I learn from, everybody that I think that I run into contact with, even if it's not what not to do. It's still a learning experience.
Exactly, that's right. I'm not doing that.
It's still a learning experience, and I still thank people for that because it's going to make me, a better person, a better mother, a better, friend, a better business person. It all goes to our good. And I love meeting people and the journey. And so I'm super excited for everybody. I really feel like 2015 is going to be an amazing year for us all. And so it's super exciting.
I agree. And I'm with you there. And, the funny thing or crazy thing about this is there's enough for all of us. It's not as if I have to now put you down in order for me to rise or vice versa. There's enough out here for all of us at our various levels or whatever journey and path we're on. But a lot of people don't see it that way. A lot of people see it like, well, in order for me to get ahead, I got to throw Tom Joyner under the bus. In order for Tom to get ahead, he got to throw Marc Medley under the bus. And in order for Nikki to get ahead, she got to throw Iyanla under the bus and Oprah under the bus. And no, there's enough out here for all of us.
Right. And you know what I think? And I always tell people, when you really can be happy for somebody else's success, that's when you're truly successful.
Right.
Because when you're so focused on what somebody is doing that may be, more than what you're doing, or they may have more than what you have, you're never going to be happy with what you have.
Correct.
And until you're happy with where you are, you're not going to be successful. And even though Oprah, you could do the exact same thing as Oprah, but you're not going to be Oprah.
Right.
And Oprah's not going to be you.
Right.
And so there's room for all of us. And I think when people really, embrace who they are in the lane that they have in life, in whatever season they're in. When somebody can take my job from me, it's no longer my job.
Correct.
And there's something better for me.
Correct.
I will tell people exactly how to do what I do. And when you can come and you can fill my position, it's no longer mine, and I need to move on.
Correct.
It's like we have to learn to let go of things, too, and move into different seasons and not be so afraid of the unfamiliar. We like things just because they're comfortable, not because they're right, but just because we're used to it. We have to learn to let go.
Now, see, I'm going to quote you on that on Twitter, because every interview somebody says something that's Twitterable. and so that quote you just said, I'm going to put it in there, like, we like things because they're comfortable, not necessarily because they're right. So
right.
I'll put that.
And maybe it was right at one time, but it doesn't stay right forever.
Right.
And, I think that, especially professionally, we have to learn not to be so scared of moving on. We have to be so scared of moving on. There's seasons for everything.
Correct.
And sometimes those seasons end, like relationships.
Yes, you're right.
Until you find the one that you're supposed to be in. You have got to be able to let go of things.
This is true. So tell me a little bit about your book, Easier Said Than Done.
Easier Said Than Done is a novel. I write fiction and I write nonfiction, but I love writing novels. And so Easier Said Than Done is about an entertainment executive from Chicago who has ties in Jamaica. So it's partially set in Chicago and it's partially set in Jamaica. And it's a love story. It's a story about family. It's a story about redemption. And it's a story about really finding where you belong. Kingston, once her grandmother in Jamaica dies, Kingston, who is the main character, has to make, some tough decisions about her life and where she is supposed to be and who she's supposed to be with. So Damon, who is the lead male character, is her love interest. They had a hot and steamy college romance, and then it went bad really, really quickly and kind of ended abruptly with no real reason why. And Damon is a doctor in Jamaica now, and she goes back and they reconnect, and it's juicy.
Now, is that downloadable? Is it on Amazon?
It is downloadable.
It's downloadable as well as in the bookstores? Because I know. I told you my wife is from Jamaica, so I know right off the bat the storyline. She'll enjoy that one.
Yeah, I'll still enjoy it, and you might benefit from it as well.
Oh, I know I will, because that's what I say. I read all types of books. So I always have. I share this almost probably weekly, but people think I'm like odd because I really do not watch a lot of television. But I will sit there and read for 5 or 6 or 7, 8 hours straight, and in between that time, I'll just switch from book to book to book. And people say, "Well, how do you do that?" I say, "It's the same way you watch 5 or 10 sitcoms, a half hour at a time." So I read all types of books, and I just keep switching off. So I go from like business books, education books, autobiographies into novels. So sometimes the novel just provides a great break from some of the heavier stuff.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, especially people from Jamaica when they read it, to get their feedback on it. But it is downloadable. It's published through Brown Girls Publishing, and you may have heard of Victoria Christopher Murray and Rashonda Tate Billingsley.
Yes, Rashonda's been on the show.
Right? It's their company. They decided to form a publishing company for voices that they felt weren't getting the attention. And so I was one of the first authors that they signed and published. And the movie, it's been optioned for a movie. So I'm super excited about that.
Oh, I'm sure.
We're going to start production this year. The script is already underway, so I'm excited.
Well, I'll be looking out for that. Excited. But yeah, Rashonda's been on the show twice. I've had her on because, like I said, I've been on air on in this studio in this station for 14 years, and over the time, I've met some wonderful people. We've probably never met each other in face or in person, but by telephone and in social media, wonderful connections. And Rashonda has been on here 2 or 3 times. And it's so interesting to walk in. I had this crazy experience like maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. My mom lives in Georgia. And we happened to be in the Walmart in one of those little towns in Georgia. And I'm walking through the book section, and I'm coming across all these authors that I've been in contact with. And I'm like a little kid at this point. Mom, I know this person. Mom, this person's been on the show. This author's been here. I've talked to this author. So it's always an interesting experience to walk up on books and I know or either have spoken with the author of it. So I'm definitely, before the day is done, if it's downloadable, I will have easier said than done. And if I can get, because I know like my wife's iPad isn't working, so I'll have to get her a hard copy of it. But
it's available on Amazon and anywhere books are sold. So.
Okay, well, definitely before the day is out, I will have easier said than done. And you already whet my appetite with the storyline, so I'm going to be cracking that open before this day is over.
Oh, well, good. I would love to know what you think.
Oh, I'll let you know. I'll give you some feedback. That's either when I'm done with it or halfway through or what have you. And it's always, especially now that you say it's going into movies, because that's the other thing I love about novels and books like that, particularly ones that don't have pictures. I can insert my own people in there. Yeah. And I can remember, like, I'm trying to think, I forget the author's name. She wrote a book and I'm reading it, and the main character, the male character, for some reason, Rick Fox kept popping in my mind, and I emailed her and said, if you ever go into a movie, Rick Fox is a perfect character for this part.
Right. Oh, that's funny.
But it's like, you can just put like Denzel or whoever. You can put it like that. Right. That looks like my neighbor, and that looks, but yeah, I love to do that and just kind of use my imagination as to, that reminds me of. So, all right. Well, I tell you this, because there's so many other things, and I am so happy for you in terms of the BlackAmericaWeb.com, Tom Joyner, your book, your company, everything. And the thing that I'm really thrilled about was the fact that I could tell over the airways. We haven't seen each other in person, face to face, but I can feel your energy over the airways, that you're very down to earth. And many people, for whatever crazy reason, when they reach a certain status or stature or position, they get like highfalutin or feel as if they don't need people, not realizing that, wait a minute, there's no such thing as a star without a fan. So, and it's like, I've met many celebrities in athletics and in entertainment and so on. I mean, I met them, and some have like given me that, like, who am I to talk to you type attitude, and others have just been so down to earth that it's not funny. I remember years ago, whenever it was Nick Ashford and Simpson, I remember, and when we met, it was like we had known each other for years, and Nick didn't know me from Adam's house cat. But you would have never known that whenever we were out there, talking to each other on the floor, what have you. And then I've met others that, like I said, look down the nose. And my thing is, like, in my view, we're all human beings. Because for me, if President Obama walked in here right now, it would be no different from me than anybody else, other than, you know what, Mr. President, I honor your position, and, I respect the title as any other, but in terms of us being human beings, it would be like, let's talk like anybody else. But absolutely. I appreciate the fact that I could feel it on the air that you are who you are, regardless of who you work with or who you work for, or your own company or your titles or your accomplishments. And that is super important.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Because as I said earlier, I mean, you're all over the social media. I mean, I promoted this show probably, and this is the crazy thing, and you probably appreciate this in a way. A lot of times, at least what's happened to me over the years, is the shows I promote the most, for some reason, that's when Murphy tries to kick in. The shows that I promote the most is when Murphy's Law gets at its height.
Oh, okay.
In terms of, because I'm sitting there all week like, Lord, I'm promoting this one heavy. Please let everything be right in the studio Saturday morning.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have not conquered the technology gremlins that
exactly
sometimes get us. Yeah.
I feel like the studio, like, I'm the first show of the morning, so in order for me to get in, I have to be escorted in by the police. I mean, they really they make me feel special for sure. But there's sometimes I have like done a heavy promotional show, and that particular morning they'll be tied up with something else, causing me to run late into the studio. I'm like, of all mornings.
Yeah.
Or I'll get in here and the equipment is not working. Like, no, not this morning. Right. So it was one of those, when I started promoting early in the week, I was like, Lord, please let everything be up to speed. And it was. I am too. Because, again, your name is known. So as I've been promoting, I'm sure people that might not rise this early did. And so they are tuned in, and welcome to you. And then, of course, I record it. And as you know, it'll be out on all the social media sites, and I'll send it to you as well.
Oh,
but
good.
I truly appreciate your taking the time with us this morning. I guess it's about 6:15 a.m. Dallas time, somewhere around there.
Yes, sir.
And it's 7:15 New Jersey time. Yeah. Well, that's the other thing about media. Like I'll look on the advertisements for the various news programs that start 4:30 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, oh God. But media is all around the clock. There is no like set hours.
Nope.
And,
no
so
set hours, and as you know, I mean, this really is the best time slot to get. I mean, mornings is the coveted.
The drive times,
slot. So,
the 6 to 9 is the drive slot. That's right. When I started the show 14 years ago, I was on Friday nights and Saturday nights from midnight to 1 a.m. So I had.
You got the special crowd. you got the crowd leaving the club.
That's right.
When I started, I would do like the overnight slot too sometimes with GCI just to hone my own individual skills. It's like it's a different skill set when you're a part of a group, but it's you have to also have your own personality.
Right.
And I would get some calls.
You're right. That's right.
Oh no, it was funny.
But yeah, I was Friday night, Saturday night from midnight to 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And then I got moved to Friday mornings 6 to 7:30, and then the last move, which I've been now here about 7, 8, probably close to 10 years now, is the Saturday morning slot, which I've been and stayed at. So it's been going well, and like I said, I continue to get guests such as yourself and others, and I'm grateful and thankful. And again, I just can't express appreciation enough for you rising early to join me this morning, because I've had a blast.
Well, I have too, and so I am very appreciative of you and all that you do, and inviting me on. It's been a lot of fun.
It has, and at this point, as we come to the end, I always give my guests the opportunity to promote. You can promote as much as you'd like in terms of websites and all this. The only thing we don't say on there, as you know, is the dollar amounts. But other than that, anything you like to promote in terms of where you're going to be, your company, your websites, this is your opportunity to do that as we close out.
Well, I thank you for that. I mean, I would just love for people, especially if you're interested in writing a book or you want more help in developing a platform, that you do check out the website, wannabeanauthor.com. My company site is NikkiWoodsMedia.com, and we have a ton of information on there as well. I love working with people, and so if you think that you're, my company and I are a right fit for you and what you're trying to accomplish, I would love to talk more with you about that. And like Marc said, you can find me on all of the social media sites. I tell people it's easier to tweet me than to call me. So, you can find me there, and I'm really, really responsive when people reach out to me that way. And I'm just looking forward to it. You can buy the book on Amazon.com. It's easier said than done. And I just appreciate everything. I mean, the love that people show. I mean, it's indescribable, and but I'm always appreciative of it, and I hope that they feel that I love them back as much as they show love for me. So,
well, again, I thank you, and I wish you nothing in 2015 and beyond other than inner peace, health, wealth, success, and happiness, and we will be in touch.
Absolutely, thank you, and I wish you the same. It's going to be a great year.
Yes, it is. All right, take care now. If you need to go back and get a nap now, you can off the air and go back to bed or whatever you'd like to do. But enjoy.
No, that's right.
Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Take care now.